So, hello everyone. I hope you guys can hear me okay. I'm a little pressed on time, so I really have to start now. Welcome to my presentation on the state of the media initiative for Drupal 8 core. I will start with a quote. It's still kind of weird that you can install CMS in 2017 and not be able to just add a simple YouTube video. We have an arm. We are, as I feel, doing much better in almost all other areas. So we are trying to do something about that. The quote is mine, by the way, but if it's true, then it doesn't matter. So who am I? My name is Sean. I am seanB on Drupal.org, and I also tweet sometimes when I have time. I'm a freelance developer. I started in Drupal 5, and I have been working with Drupal for 8+ years now. And I recently became the core media maintainer for Drupal 8. So, what do we have in Drupal 8 right now? We have basic support for local files and images. You can just add a file or image to entity and then upload files. We have support for responsive images through the responsive image and breakpoint modules. We can embed images in Wysiwyg through the CK editor and editor modules. We have some basic accessibility features like alt and title tags for your files. And we have a basic file listing where you can view all the files that you have uploaded. But there's also a lot of nice things that we still don't have, unfortunately. Yeah, just basically reusing media from a node or whatever is hard. Editors now have to upload the same file over and over again when they use it multiple times. We are missing a site-wide media library. Same subject. It would be nice to organize your media. They already uploaded before. Remote media is, of course, one of the things now really Instagram or whatever, embedding that. And fieldable files. Right now, a file is not fieldable, so you have alt and also something that people really want. And then bulk uploading. That's really important for people, and this was based on a survey done a couple of years ago already. Over 200 responses and top things that came out of the survey. Before I talk about what we're doing right now, you may already know this stuff, but I think it's really important to know where you're coming from before you tell where you're going. So I will go through this really quick. Drupal 6, in core there was the upload module. You can attach some files to a node, and that was basically it. You can't do anything else from core. In contrib there was the CCK modules, for those who remember that, with file field and image field. You had image cache to do some basic processing like scaling or whatever. You had IMCE for embedding files in Wysiwyg editor. And that was it. So in Drupal 7 it became a little better because CCK went into core as file and image module. A lot of users that installed the CMS just plain and already were able to do a lot more. And image cache also went into core, so scaling images was already a possibility from the start. And in contrib there was a lot of work being done. The responsive images were possible through the picture and breakpoint modules. Then the media and file entity contrib modules, I think. For the reuse of media, the site-wide media library, fieldable files, bulk uploads, and all the things possible. And only one thing was like a little bit, everything was treated as a file. So when you have external a YouTube video or tweet or whatever, that was a little bit hard because those are not files. There was more contrib functionality to make sure that media was being embedded in the CK editor. We had an integration module for that. There was an OEmbed provider which tried to solve the issue of embedding. There was a YouTube module for that as well, and I'm never sure how you say this, but the plupload module to bulk uploads. And entity embed was also able to embed file entities as well as other entities, of course. And there were over 10 different ways to do image cropping. Still a big WTF. So Drupal 8, that's why we're here. We have basically two approaches right now. In contrib, there is a file entity, which is kind of the same. Wait, let me tell that later. Then you also have media entity. That's the other approach, which are kind of like two totally different ways of doing sort of the same thing. Well, file entity is still based on files that are as also in Drupal 7 for external content. So the maintainers themselves it in the beginning and be true media entity. Media entity is a more abstracted view of media, so it's basically an API module. It's kind of hard to maintain and not really extendable. In Drupal 8 we tried to solve that. So the media entity is the core, the API module, straightforward to extend with integration for documents, images, is as well as a lot of other stuff, but it has media entity integration as well. And in contrib, there's a lot of other, problems, like entity browser is an entity reference widget on steroids. Then we have entity embed that builds on the embed API to put entities in a CK editor as well, so that solves the embedding stuff. And there's inline entity form, that's a widget for and editing entities in the subform. So when you have built a media item inside the node, then normally you would have to create so you create a field form. We have a lot of other modules. Embed will create an embed widget for you. We have the crop API, which allows you to do all kinds of cropping, and image widget crop and focal point examples of modules that are built on top of that. Then we have the field formatter. A little bit hard to explain, but you have when you have a media entity that contains an image, and you place the media entity in a node, then there are like a tunnel from the node to directly to the image. I hope I explained it okay, but it's a really cool module. And dropzone.js is for the drag and drop uploading. Yeah, so we basically just now arrived at the media initiative part, why you're all here. We have separate goals that were determined in DrupalCon Dublin. There was basically the idea from, okay, let's get all the important stuff we're doing right now into core. So we wanted to add basic media, decent CMS, so why can't I just add a YouTube video? Create a robust foundational API. So that's basically all the integration with YouTube, Pinterest, Instagram, whatever. Everything just builds on top of the API. We want to keep the core functionality very limited, so it will not be, it will not do everything. We'll try to solve, I don't know, make sure that contrib can build on top of this. A foundation for integrating not every site needs this, so this is typically done in contrib, but core needs to lay the foundation, so that can be easily done. And to do this, we or phases, as they were called. So the phase one was doing part of the initiative. So we make sure we need to have parity with the eventually replace the file and image visible to users, so every time you do something with files or media, it will be done through the media entities and no longer using the file and image fields that we have right now. Embed support, this is we think it's crucial to prove that the media initiative is actually worth doing, so we want to have this in as soon as possible so you can add YouTube videos or other providers. Media library, at least headers. Wysiwyg embedding is also really important, that also because the core file and image modules already provide some kind of way to embed files and images into CK editor, we have to make sure that media does the same, and even better when we get the chance. So phase two, the extras part, that will be the shiny stuff, as we call it. So there's a lot of things that are already being done in contrib that still needs to work, and there's a lot of functionality that people can think of that will be done in image cropping, advanced embedding, and stuff like that will be done in contrib. Specifically see as going into core someday. Then for it. In phase 3, there's the extend part. This will also be contrib. So the media initiative is not only a core thing, but it's extending our plans to contrib as well, and that will be for all the complicated use cases. Things like integration with dams or whatever will be support for the popular things, so we are making that part of our plan, but phase 3. We have a long way to go before we're there. So I want to talk about the architecture right now for a bit. The media of the standard entity API. So we are not really doing anything new here. Media is just the content entity, same as node is, same as taxonomy is. Media types are config entities. Node types are, I don't know, you have, for block content you have some types as well. Media are not necessarily files, so we want to and the way we do that is the power for all this stuff comes from source plugins. This is the only new thing that we introduced in the media entity core API that will give us more power. So the source plugins will be used by the media types, and media types, or media will use the media types. So I will talk about the source plugins a little bit more right now because those are really important. What they are supposed to do is, like, each media type has a media types that use the same source plugin. So, for example, when you have images, you can have a folder or a media type called logos, where you just up media type called image, do all other images, but they use the same source plugin. Source plugin will be responsible for all the logic to how a media is stored. So, do we store a file ID, or do we it will be responsible for validation. So when we have, for example, to validate if the same for each media type that uses this. If somebody has any questions, it also can fetch arbitrary metadata. So, for example, when you have a Facebook post, responsible for exposing the metadata to the core API. And the source plugin has only one requirement, and that there's a source field, which is field, or it can be just a simple text field, and that will store the main relation to the external media. So we'll store a Facebook ID, or it will store a file ID when you use a file field or whatever, and this is the only requirement that a source plugin has. Another thing that we found really important is the media library. So this is like a pared down version of contrib solutions. I don't know who installed Lightning or Thunder by any chance, but they have already thought about like how we do a nice media library, and also was looked at other systems like WordPress, or how do they do that. And we just defined like an MVP of that. It will be based on views, so it will be easy to extend it, but it's not an API, so that's really important. It will just do that, and when you want more, contrib. Want to be able to display items in a customizable view using a customizable display mode. So that's also like using the display mode, view modes. It will give you a lot of power to put whatever fields you want in your media library and be able to easily extend it. And there should be a new widget for nodes. So when you just it's an entity reference field referencing widget for that. So the last part is reusing media assets, but not creating them. In the end, we want to be able to create we have to pick our battles, so to say. And it will be an experimental module, like the core media API. Yeah, will handle data. So we have to make sure that it's stable and not be experimental, so we can't change it anymore. For the library, so we have no problem with that being experimental, and that gives us more time to improve on that.
What is the plan?
The planning is hopefully 8.6. We wanted 8.5. Goals that we want. I think in about a year. Yeah. This is a mock-up that was made by, I'm not sure who did it, but it was by UX team, and there were several iterations, and this is what came out of it as being the ultimate media library, or at least for core. So here you the way to add stuff. You can have categories, you can sort, you can search, you can add multiple, whatever you want. Probably the first version will not look like this. I think adding new media is not part of the original plan, and I think bulk selects are part of it. Categories can be done through you. But I have a demo at the end of the presentation where I show what we have right now, so I will not tell too much. So then we come to the implementation roadmap part. Media entity in core was the first thing that we need to get done, and this worked. While doing that, we renamed the media entity module to media to be more with nodes, because it's not. So that was media. Media entity document was slightly improved and changed and went into core as not a document source plugin, but a file source plugin. A more generic way to call it, and not documents, of course. Then image went, media entity image contrib module went into core in the media module as the image source plugin. And this table API is now part of 8.4, but using the new media API, we refactored a lot of stuff, improved a lot of stuff. And if we would make the module visible and people would install it, things will break. So until we have like an upgrade path, and there are some other things that we want to get done in usability aspects and stuff like that, until we get that done, it will be hidden. So these are the things that we want to get done before we show it. We only want to have the migration path that's targeted for 8.4, by the way. We're sprinting on that in DrupalCon, and hopefully before that. There's a lot of work being done already. The widget for media reference fields, providing file and image uploads. With a totally new interface when media will eventually replace. Where you just have an upload field and just upload it. It will create a media entity for you. User shouldn't notice a big difference. The migrate module integration, there is basic support for entity. So that's something we need to fix, and that's targeted for 8.5, so I think in each little over 6 months. A migration path for core file and image fields, so we want to make sure file and image fields were replaced by media fields. Yeah. Add the media library, that's targeted for 8.6. It's just a very complex thing. Yeah, I don't see it happening before 8.5, and if it does, then I will be really happy. Then after the module is shown, there's a bunch of should-haves. A new source plugin for Embed Support. We targeted this for 8.5. Now you targeted for 8.6, and a could have that's targeted for 8.5. So why is that? Well, basically this is less complex, and there's already a lot of work being done on it by 8.5. Per bundle permissions, there's also a patch for that already, so that can be reviewed or improved a little and committed. Metadata mapping, that's very complex because you can have all kinds of metadata attached to it. I just know, but we don't even know what media entity providers will be created. I can imagine like digital asset management systems provide even more metadata than Facebook does. And the way to handle all that in a way is really complex because things, metadata could be just a string, but it can also be a taxonomy term, or even want to create like a really nice interface and API to make sure that people can create metadata or add metadata to media entities in a really easy way. But this is also really complex. Code improvements. We want to add a little more base classes, refactoring tests. It's just some grunt work. And if anybody is interested, we have a we prioritize them, and it's under construction. There's stuff being added. Well, not every day, but a lot. But if you want, you can follow it there. Then there are some questions that we get asked a lot, and that's why I thought I would mention this in the presentation, because we have some answers. First, how do I port my module that I integrated with media entity? When you build a custom Drupal 8 site, provider or source plugin, I think it was types in contrib. There's a change record for that, so that will take you methods that changed on the interfaces and everything that was renamed or changed, and what you can do to upgrade it to the core API. Which modules should I use for my new Drupal 8 site? Well, of course, you should pick media entity over file entity. As long as we don't have all the media entity extensions, Facebook and stuff, upgraded, an upgrade path will come, but the custom code is hard for us to upgrade that. So when you create an entity provider, just know that you're probably going to have to change stuff later. Can I use the other contrib modules? Well, all the contrib modules that are based on media entity now should be ported. It's also a lot of work, and we need help from the from the module maintainers. So it's not all in our, but user entity embed, video embed field, all the things like that are already being ported or are high on our priority list. We do all the most used modules first, of course, but in the end, yeah, we need help, a lot of help. So, if you want to help out, we have IRC meetings weekly, every Wednesday. I know it's, I'm from the Netherlands, and there it's like 3 p.m. GMT, and we already had some issues during summer and winter time changes, but just ask on Wednesday around 3 o'clock and people will tell you what time it starts. There are some contacts. Adam Hunnick, sorry if I said it wrong. Van Proxima, he's the other maintainer, and Sean. You can contact us always, and Gabor is also somebody who helps us out a lot. Basically say, so you can always ask him. And it's not only coders that we're looking for, especially people come from a UX perspective, and they're like, I can't show this to an editor, and they were like, yeah, you're right. So please help, please help. Then I have a short demo. Am I doing okay on time?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Where is it? Ah, here. Let me just zoom in a bit. So this is what we have in 8.4 right now, and I installed 3 patches to make the media library work. So I just wanted to show you how far we already came. There is a media tab where you can just view the files that you have at the moment. And there is an add media button to create new media. I just installed the core module, so we basically only have support for file and image right now. Embed still being worked on. And you can just add an image. There are some issues about not having to name everything, or maybe we can do this automatically and the source plugin could provide a name for you or whatever, but that's of that. Let me just choose a file. Then we can name it, I think, something with lights. Entity request too large, crap. Let me pick some other one. Okay, I already have this one in my library, doesn't matter. So we have a pencil right there. And we just add a new media entity, and I don't know if it's visible or not, but you have media-4. So this is now just a media entity, just as any other entity, like a node or whatever. It used an image field, so that's also something you would add to nodes right now. So when we say we want to replace core file and image modules, we don't say we delete the core file and image modules, we just say we don't expose users anymore, and the only entity actually uses file and image fields are media entities. So we have this in our library now, twice, because I uploaded it already yesterday. And I have an article where we want to add the media. So we can edit this. And here we have a media library, or like no, it's an entity reference field referencing media. But we have the library. So here we get a simple library where we have some extra metadata. We can just select 1 or 2 files. And then they will be added to your node. And we can save it. And we just added media. Right now they're rendered entities, so you have the title of the media item and the image. And these fields can also be changed just like you would change any other entity through the view mode. Another thing I would like to show you guys is how you create a media type. So let's say I have another media type that I want to call logo, and it just uses the image source as a source as well. Then now we really see what the power is of the source plugins. You have 2 different media types, both using images. And we can reuse an existing source field, or we can just have this source plugin generate a new one for you. And the field mapping, this is the metadata mapping. This is a little complex at the moment, and I will show you in 2 seconds why we should improve this. Because now we can't select any fields. Well, we can select what metadata we want to map. But we would probably have a little bit issues, because the name field is just the title of the media entity. And we don't have any fields yet where we can map, like, being confusing, I know, but this is really confusing for me as well. So when I have the logo type right now, and we have a field right there for the media image that was just created. And what I need to do now to map my metadata is I now need to create a new field to map the metadata. So I have a width field, for example. And now when I edit the media type, now I am able to select a field to map the width metadata to an actual field where I want to store it. So this is complex, and I hope you now see why we should really improve this. But it's complex. Yeah, that's basically it. I still have 5 or 10 minutes left. I don't know if anyone has any questions at the moment. I could also, yeah?
Is there anything we can do on the new 8.3 build that prepares it to be easier once we upgrade and the media is fully integrated?
What you could do is use media entity, the contrib module, and all the modules that are based on that. And for those modules, for media entity and contrib, and all the modules related to it, there should be an upgrade path, and also like a little manual. So download all these modules and just run it in, run the upgrade path in this specific order. And yeah, that should work, because there's a lot of sites that we're using ourselves right now, also based on modules. No.
I have a question.
Yes.
Like, if you have very many different roles of users,
Yes.
And these users, like if you think about a really big website, and the users, they are only allowed to like work on certain content types or whatever. You know, is there anything, or how far is it like with the permissions regarding that you can only see your images or the images that the people in your role have been doing?
I can show the permissions that we have right now. And we have an issue to add per bundle permissions. So you can say this editor or this role can only upload logos, or it can only edit logos, or another user can only...
I'm more thinking about like if you have like a logo, but I only want this roles to be able to work with this type of logo sets. And then another, you know, I don't want them to be able to see the other logo sets that have also been created, which is the same bundle. You get my point?
Yeah, I think so. And well, you have the permission of update any and update own.
Yeah, but exactly. But when I have the role, and I want that role, like I want this user to be able to use all the images that the other people in this role have been putting in, and not the people. Like
oh, so okay, so you want to have access to all the files created by the people with the same role.
Exactly. So, like for example, the logo button that you created.
Yeah.
So we could, for example, if I upload something, you will see it, but Michael here will not see it because he's not in the role.
I don't think that's planned for core. I'm pretty sure that it's not planned for core, but it won't be that hard to do in contrib. And I think you can also do it in a generic way. Something like this will also be really useful for nodes, for example. So it just uses the entity access system. And when you create it in a generic way, then you can also have like nodes that you can share between roles and taxonomy. It's not part of our plan, but I don't think it's really that hard to build something like this. Yeah.
Some idea of doing something.
Okay. No problem. Yes.
Do responsive images have a place in this media?
Good question. The question was, do responsive images have a place? Sorry. Yeah. Well, yes. Image fields. So responsive images and breakpoints and image styles can all be configured in your media entity, your base field. Let me see. So we have in your media type. So your media entity, image style, point settings or whatever, just like you would with image fields directly in nodes. Only there's a media entity in between right now. Any more questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time. I hope you learned a little bit and are excited about what's coming. And if you want to help, just hit me up and I'll be glad to show you what we got and some issues that you might be able to work on.